Welcome to the Communities Acting to Refer and Engage training, brought to you by the Vermont Violence Prevention Project. We're excited to have you here. This training was originally developed in 2016 by Stephen Vina, Linda Langford, and Nancy Zars, with support from a grant awarded to the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. In 2024, this training was updated by Kevin Hitton, Sarah Mell, Elliot Ruggles, and Annie Valentine at the University of Vermont, in collaboration with the Vermont Violence Prevention Project. This project was made possible through funding from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships. Before we get started, please take a moment to complete the pre-training survey. You can find it at go.uvm.edu/4pre. We understand that the topics covered in this training can be challenging and may be triggering for some individuals. Your mental and emotional well-being is our priority. If at any point you feel overwhelmed or need a moment, please don't hesitate to pause the training. Take the time you need and return when you're ready to continue the training. The purpose of this training is to provide strategies to help prevent and respond to violence, while also strengthening community health and resiliency. By the end of this session, we have two key goals. First, to enhance your confidence as an engaged bystander. And second, to help you identify resources and services in your community that can support others in need. This training is divided into 4 modules. The first module focuses on violence prevention and introduces a framework for responding to concerning behaviors. Module 2 explores how to notice and identify concerns, while Module 3 reviews alternative options for acting when encountering concerning behaviors. Finally, Module 4 highlights a variety of community resources and encourages you to explore the resources available in your area. Module 1, Violence Prevention. In this module, we will define, identify, and recognize the differences and similarities between various types of violence, including targeted violence. We will explore the relevance of this topic and the role each of us plays in addressing targeted violence. You'll also learn about common barriers to intervening. Finally, we'll clarify what this training is asking you to do and what it is not asking you to do. What is violence? Violence is the intentional use of physical force or power, whether threatened or actual, against oneself, another person, or a group or community. It either results in, or has a high likelihood of resulting in, injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. Different types of violence include the following. Physical violence happens when someone uses a part of their body or an object to control another person's actions. Sexual violence occurs when someone is forced to unwillingly take part in a sexual activity. Emotional violence takes place when someone says or does something to make another person feel stupid or worthless. Psychological violence happens when someone uses threats or causes fear in an individual to gain control. Spiritual violence, also known as religious violence, occurs when someone uses another person's spiritual beliefs to manipulate, dominate, or control them. Cultural violence takes place when someone is harmed as a result of practices that are part of their culture, religion, or tradition. Verbal abuse happens when someone uses language, either spoken or written, to harm an individual. Financial abuse occurs when someone controls another person's financial resources without their consent or misuses those resources. Neglect happens when someone who is responsible for providing care or assistance fails to do so. These are just a few examples of the many forms of violence. Regardless of the type or form, all violence is harmful. What is targeted violence? Targeted violence refers to a violent incident where the perpetrator specifically identifies the intended victim or victims. The victims may include a group or class of people, such as a racial, religious, or ethnic community, a particular person or group of people, or even a specific location. Let's take a closer look. In this image, notice the cat. What does its behavior tell you? It appears focused, like it might be hunting or stalking prey. The cat is hunched low in the grass, perhaps to stay hidden, and seems to be moving slowly and steadily forward. This behavior mirrors some characteristics of targeted violence. Targeted violence is often planned and purposeful. It is thought out in advance. It is directed against specific targets. It involves heightened and focused awareness. And it is violence intended to achieve a specific goal or goals. In contrast, let's consider this image of a cat. Its teeth are exposed, its back is raised, and its fur is standing on end. You can imagine it hissing or making noise. This cat looks ready for a fight, as if it was just startled by something it perceives as a threat. This cat is displaying impulsive or reactive violence. Some characteristics of reactive violence include: it is reactive and immediate. It is directed against perceived threats. It involves intense emotion and expressiveness. It activates a fight or flight response. And the goal is to reduce or eliminate the threat. Why is it important to understand targeted violence? Understanding targeted violence is critical for several reasons. Prevention. It enables the development and implementation of effective strategies to identify and address potential threats before they escalate into violence. Promotion of awareness. It raises awareness about the prevalence and impact of targeted violence, fostering a collective commitment to address root causes and promote social cohesion. Intervention. It allows for timely intervention and response measures to disrupt or mitigate planned acts of violence, potentially saving lives and reducing harm. Fostering resilience. It empowers communities by helping individuals recognize and address factors contributing to violence, promoting unity and solidarity in response to threats. Support for victims and survivors. It ensures access to support services, such as counseling, advocacy, and legal assistance, to help victims and survivors of targeted violence. While some forms of targeted violence, such as mass casualty events, occur less frequently, they have a significant impact on our communities. These acts often receive in-depth media attention, undermine social trust, and hold significant power to affect individuals and entire communities. Homicides in the United States. Let's take a moment to look at some statistics to better understand the scope of the impact of violence. In the U.S., intimate partners are responsible for nearly 50% of female homicide victims and 10% of male homicide victims. Research data on transgender and non-binary homicide indicates that, between 2013 and 2020, 21% of these murders were committed by an intimate partner. Additionally, intimate partner violence, or IPV, contributes to an estimated 6% of suicides. Intimate partner violence is a form of targeted violence. In 2021, there were nearly twice as many suicides in the United States as there were homicides, and only 103 deaths were reported from active shooter incidents. While planning for an active shooter or mass casualty event is important, the likelihood of experiencing such an event is very low. However, given the high number of individuals facing personal struggles, the chances of being in a position to support someone in need are much higher. Let's consider other causes of annual deaths in the United States. In 2023, preventable drug overdoses resulted in 107,543 deaths, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Traffic accidents claimed 40,990 lives, as reported by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Airplane accidents resulted in 286 fatalities, according to the National Transportation Safety Board. Heat-related fatalities, based on a 30-year average from 1994 to 2023, accounted for 183 deaths annually, according to the National Weather Service. And in 2021, active shooter incidents resulted in 103 fatalities, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. While the relatively low number of active shooter deaths in the statistics may seem hopeful, the reality is less reassuring. Unfortunately, shooting incidents in our schools and public spaces have increased significantly in recent years. Consider this graphic representing K-12 shooting incidents from the year 1966 to 2023. In the next slide, we will present the names of some schools that have experienced a shooting incident. As you watch the names scroll by, take a moment to see if you recognize any of the names. As a reminder, our focus is on targeted violence because research shows that the majority of mass casualty and active shooter incidents are acts of targeted violence rather than reactive violence. Additionally, studies by the FBI and Secret Service have demonstrated that targeted violence is preventable through early intervention and proactive measures. The pathway to violence is a framework that helps us understand how acts of targeted violence often unfold. It includes 4 key stages: ideation, planning, preparation, and implementation. Ideation is the first stage, where an individual begins to think about committing an act of violence. This may involve feelings of grievance, anger, or a desire to solve perceived problems through violence. Next is planning. During this stage, the individual begins to develop a plan for how the act of violence will be carried out. This can include identifying targets, selecting a location, or deciding on a method. The third stage is preparation. At this point, the individual takes steps to gather the tools, resources, or information needed to carry out their plan. This might include acquiring weapons, conducting surveillance, or practicing specific actions. Finally, there is implementation. This is the stage where the individual puts their plan into action, committing the violent act. Understanding this pathway is crucial, as it can provide opportunities for intervention and prevention at various stages, helping to disrupt the cycle before it reaches the implementation phase. Information leakage is a key concept when understanding the pathway to violence and the role of an engaged bystander. By focusing on the pathway to violence, we can better recognize signs of information leakage, which allows us to support community members in need. Information leakage refers to the communication of an intent to do harm. This can occur in many forms, including social media posts, emails, voicemails, videos, letters, diaries, journals, blogs, vandalism, or other observable behaviors. Leakage serves as a warning and can indicate a preoccupation with a target, signaling that someone may be on the pathway to violence. In Module 2, we will explore warning signs associated with targeted violence and the pathway to violence. These warning signs often take the form of information leakage. By recognizing these signs, we can take steps to intervene and support individuals and communities before violence occurs. It's important to reflect on why we are discussing violence. What do you believe your role or responsibility is in preventing violence, including targeted violence? There are many reasons why someone may not recognize or act on information that indicates a member of their community needs help. In some cases, community members may feel that intervening is not their responsibility or assume that someone else will take action. Others may fear being judged for getting involved, or worry that their actions might unintentionally cause harm. Others may feel unequipped or unsure about how to help. One way to address these concerns is by developing a shared vision of the role we can play in supporting the health and well-being of our communities. So, what do you believe your role or responsibility is in preventing violence, including targeted violence? What are the benefits of community members learning to play a role in addressing violence? When community members actively engage in addressing violence, they contribute to a safer and more resilient community. This involvement helps build trust among community members, strengthens social bonds, and fosters a sense of shared responsibility. It also allows individuals to recognize and act on warning signs of violence, potentially preventing harm before it occurs. By working together, communities can create an environment where everyone feels supported, valued, and safe. How does this all connect to overall community health and well-being? Addressing violence and promoting prevention directly contributes to the health and well-being of the entire community. When communities prioritize safety and take steps to prevent violence, they foster an environment where trust, collaboration, and resilience can thrive. This helps reduce fear and anxiety, builds stronger social connections, and ensures that individuals feel supported and valued. Ultimately, a community committed to preventing violence is a healthier, more vibrant, and more inclusive place for everyone. Consider the graphics representing Alex's circles of influence. This is an activity you can do for yourself. Start by drawing a circle and writing your name in the middle. Next, draw additional circles that represent the different groups or communities you are a part of, connecting them to your primary circle. Both diagrams on the screen represent the same concept. The one on the left treats all of your groups as equal, while the varied sizes of the circles on the right may reflect the level of impact these groups have on your life. In both examples, the circles of influence provide a visual way to understand how each of us interacts within multiple contexts. Our roles in each of these contexts may vary, but regardless of our role, every one of these circles represents a place where we can notice concerns and make a difference. Consider pausing the training for a moment to create your own circles of influence diagram. This activity will help you visualize the various contexts in which you interact and the roles you play in each. An engaged bystander is someone who intervenes before, during, or after a situation when they see or hear behaviors that promote violence. Take a moment to reflect on this definition. People may use different terms to describe the same concept, such as upstander, active bystander, or ally, but they all share a similar meaning. It's also important to acknowledge that there are times when we cannot, or are not, engaged bystanders, and that's okay. The purpose of this training is to help enhance our ability to be engaged bystanders, equipping us with tools and strategies to intervene when we can. Let's talk about common bystander barriers. Identifying barriers that may prevent us from being engaged bystanders can make us more aware of these challenges, helping us to better overcome them. Some common barriers include belief that others will intervene, which is also known as diffusion of responsibility. Fear for personal safety. Concern about violating someone's privacy. Fear of being judged by others, also referred to as evaluation apprehension. The influence of peers on the decision to intervene. A lack of confidence in one's ability to intervene. And a lack of knowledge about available resources. Take a moment to consider these barriers. Can you think of examples related to any of them? What about other barriers you may have encountered? Also, reflect on your own identities. What identities do you hold that may give you power to intervene? Are there any identities that might put you at greater risk if you choose to intervene? Understanding these barriers and our own identities can help us navigate situations more effectively and contribute to safer communities. Engaged bystanders have important roles, but it is equally important to understand what they are not expected to do and where their capacities are limited. For example, engaged bystanders are not clinicians, law enforcement officers, or mental health professionals. Their role is to intervene in situations of concern, not to address things that are simply different or unusual to them. Let's go through the list of what engaged bystanders do not do. They do not use stereotypes as justification for concern. They do not assess individuals. They do not diagnose individuals. They do not label individuals. They do not treat individuals. They do not monitor or surveil individuals. And they do not compromise their own safety. Now consider this. Why are these boundaries important to remember as an engaged bystander? We ask you to refrain from these actions because doing so could stigmatize or ostracize someone without a legitimate reason. Participants are not qualified to assess, diagnose, or treat individuals. We are not asking you to act as the eyes and ears of law enforcement or to monitor or stalk individuals to find something concerning. Using personal information about someone to target or isolate them within the community could lead to negative and unintended consequences. And finally, using demographic characteristics, appearance, or cultural differences as a reason for concern is unjustified. If someone makes you uncomfortable, that is your emotion to reflect on. It does not make the other person a concern. Making judgments based on these factors can lead to racist, bigoted, or xenophobic targeting of individuals who are not a threat. Understanding these boundaries helps ensure that engaged bystander actions are appropriate, ethical, and effective. Engaged bystanders play an important role in creating safer communities. They engage in conversations and offer genuine concern and support. They remain neutral and non-judgmental while helping someone they are concerned about. Engaged bystanders notice when concerning behaviors occur and are aware of the resources available in their community. If they do not feel comfortable engaging directly, they seek support from others. Clarifying these roles helps us better understand what is appropriate and effective for an engaged bystander. For the rest of this training, we will focus on these strategies and ways to enhance your abilities to be an engaged bystander, supporting your community effectively. Self-reflection is an important part of becoming an engaged bystander. Take a moment to think about these two questions. First, think of a time you witnessed something concerning but did not do or say anything. What was your barrier in that situation? Now, think of a time you witnessed something concerning and did take action by saying or doing something. What motivated you to speak up in that instance? At the end of this reflection, remember that many of us have been in situations where we wish we could address a concern but didn't act. There may have been good reasons for this, such as not knowing what to do, lacking confidence, or being concerned for personal safety. One of today's goals is to give you the knowledge and skills to feel more confident as an engaged bystander. This decision tree will be the focus of discussion for the rest of the training. It's a helpful tool that breaks down the steps we can take when we notice and identify something of concern. The decision tree provides options for acting or not acting, depending on the situation. We will come back to this tool frequently as we move through the training. The decision tree has three key components: notice, identify, and act. In Module 2, we will discuss what it means to notice and identify concerns. In Module 3, we will focus on the act piece and explore different options for taking action or choosing not to act, depending on the context. This decision tree can help guide us as we think about how to apply these concepts in real-world situations. Let's summarize Module 1. There are different types of violence, including targeted violence, which is planned and purposeful, and impulsive violence, which is reactive. Equipping community members to intervene as engaged bystanders plays a crucial role in promoting community health and well-being. By acquiring knowledge and skills, we can better overcome barriers to action and become more confident in our ability to make a positive difference. Welcome to Module 2. Notice and identify. Completing Module 1 has laid the foundation for understanding violence and the important role of engaged bystanders. In this module, we will focus on 4 key objectives. First, we will describe the difference between what is a concerning behavior and what is not. Next, we will identify the signs of distress. We will also explore the concept of bias and its impact on our actions. Finally, we will reflect on your feelings of responsibility to act as an engaged bystander. By the end of this module, you will recognize the many opportunities you have to enhance community safety and well-being through your actions. In Module 1, we introduce the decision tree. The first step on this tree is to notice and identify. In this module, we will review concepts to help us better understand what behaviors are important to notice, how to identify whether what you are seeing or hearing is of concern, and how to decide which situations may require action. It's essential to understand which behaviors are worth acting on and which are not. This includes recognizing characteristics that should not be used to determine if a situation is concerning or problematic. This module will provide you with examples of behaviors that may indicate a potential need for action, helping you become more effective as an engaged bystander. Notice, questions to consider. When identifying whether something is truly concerning, it's helpful to ask yourself these questions. What behavior are you seeing? Why is it concerning? How long have you noticed the behavior? Are you concerned for the person's safety or the safety of others? Are there other contextual factors that might be important to consider? Once you notice something, it may or may not be of concern. So how do you determine if it is? These questions can help you better assess whether what you are seeing requires further attention or action. Take a moment to reflect. Can you come up with other questions that might help identify whether something is concerning? Consider this: sometimes you're not the only one noticing these behaviors. Others may share what they've seen with you, and receiving secondhand information can sometimes feel uncomfortable. In these cases, knowing the right questions to ask can help you gather more information and better assess the concerns being expressed. Some things you might notice: increasingly erratic, unsafe, or aggressive behaviors. Hostile feelings of injustice or perceived wrongdoing. Drug or alcohol abuse. Marginalization or distancing from friends and colleagues. Changes in performance at work. Sudden and dramatic changes in home life or personality. Financial difficulties. Pending civil or criminal litigation. Observable grievances with threats or plans for retribution. and obsessing about violence or weapons. These are just some examples of behaviors that could be concerning. Let's start by recapping what you are not being asked to do. You are not being asked to diagnose, treat, monitor, or target individuals. With that in mind, the first step of the decision tree is notice. When you encounter a situation, ask yourself, what am I noticing? This list provides some examples of behaviors to consider. However, it's important to stress that these behaviors do not predict or conclusively indicate that someone may act violently. In fact, there are no definitive risk factors for targeted violence. These behaviors could mean something or nothing at all. Next, we'll move into the identify part of the decision tree. When you notice these behaviors, the next step is to determine whether or not the behavior is actually of concern. Bias and how we notice and identify. When considering how we notice behaviors, it's important to remember that we all see the world in different ways. Reflecting on our own biases is essential when interacting with others. The goal of noticing and identifying is to track behaviors that could lead to violence or harm, not to make judgments based on bias. Let's explore some types of bias. Cultural bias refers to assumptions we hold about a group based on our own cultural background. These assumptions can influence how we interpret and perceive that group, interfering with impartial judgment. Conscious bias involves attitudes or beliefs someone knowingly holds. These are biases people are aware of and express directly. Unconscious bias refers to unintentional or automatic mental associations that operate outside a person's awareness. These biases may not align with an individual's beliefs or values but can influence attitudes and behaviors, leading to assumptions. Recognizing that we are all influenced by bias is an important step. It reminds us that everyone sees the world a little differently, which can help us approach situations with greater awareness and care. Additionally, we all hold identities and characteristics that influence our interactions with others. These identities or characteristics may include things like race or ethnicity, gender expression, gender identification, sexual orientation, nationality, religion or religious affiliation, and religious practices. They can also include socioeconomic status, language proficiency, political beliefs or affiliations, appearance or physical attributes, manner of dress, responding to internal stimuli, or acting outside community norms. These factors not only impact how you might see a person or situation but may also influence how others perceive you. Recognizing these dynamics is key to understanding the role of bias in our interactions and working toward more thoughtful and equitable engagement with others. As a reminder, the goal of notice and identify is to track behaviors that could lead to violence or harm to others. Noticing and bias activity. For this activity, an image will appear for a moment. Afterward, you will be asked a question. Take a moment to reflect on your responses before proceeding to the next slide, where you'll learn more about the image. The goal of this activity isn't about what is noticed or whether your answer is right or wrong. This activity is designed to highlight how we all see the world differently based on our own socialization and experiences. It is intended to reinforce the understanding that we all have bias. The images and questions are meant to engage you in thinking about the assumptions we make, often unconsciously, and how those assumptions are shaped by our personal experiences. With just seconds to process, our unconscious bias takes over, helping us make quick decisions. Sometimes this is helpful and keeps us safe. Other times, we may be acting on outdated or inaccurate information, and it's important to pause and ensure we're not acting out of bias. It's also critical to recognize that what we see may need to be validated with additional information. We cannot rely solely on our observations. Instead, we must remain curious, ask questions, gather more information when possible, and seek to understand. What happened in the previous image? Take a moment to think about your interpretation of this image. What was the story you created from what you observed? This photograph was taken on September 26, 2012. It shows a man, Fermin Pena, attempting to repair a broken pipe in Caracas, Venezuela. Now, take a moment to reflect. What were your assumptions about this image? Why did you make those assumptions? Next image. Is anything concerning to you in this image? Take a moment to think about your interpretation of this image and if you thought anything you observed in the image was concerning to you. From September 5, 2013. People staring up at a new skyscraper in London known as the walkie-talkie. The glare off the building's skin is so intense that it apparently melted part of a car parked nearby. Take a moment to reflect. What were your assumptions about this image? Did you find anything concerning? Next image. Was this planned? Take a moment to think about your interpretation of this image and if you thought this was a planned event. February 2016. This elephant wandered out of a forest and into the streets of a city in North Bengal, India, attacking houses, shops and vehicles over a period of hours. The elephant was finally calmed with 3 tranquilizer darts. The authorities said they safely returned the elephant to the forest. Take a moment to reflect. What were your assumptions about this image? Did you think the event was planned or not? Why did you make those assumptions? Next image. What happened next? Take a moment to think about your interpretation of this image and what you thought was going to happen next. April 2013. Pelicans waited to be released into their outdoor enclosure at a bird park in Marlow, eastern Germany. Take a moment to reflect. What were your assumptions about this image? What did you think was going to happen next? Next image. How do you think he is feeling? Take a moment to think about your interpretation of this image and what you are seeing. April 2006, a Greek man grabbed a bag of tangerines as farmers handed out free food in Athens to protest government plans to overhaul the pension system. Take a moment to reflect. What were your assumptions about this image? How did you think he was feeling and what observation led you to that thought? Why did you make those assumptions? Final image. What year was this photo taken? Take a moment to think about your interpretation of this image and what visual information could help you determine a year. This photo comes from the 2009 inaugural ball celebrating President Obama's election. Notice the use of small digital cameras. If this image was taken today, how might it look different? Maybe cameras would be replaced with smartphones? For context, the iPhone was introduced in January of 2007. Take a moment to reflect. What were your assumptions about this image? What year did you guess? Did you also focus on the cameras? Noticing and bias activity. Let's begin by considering these reflection questions. What happened during the activity? What did you learn about yourself? And how can this apply to being an engaged bystander? This activity was designed to help you think critically about how your own experiences and biases shape the way you see the world. Take a moment to reflect on what stood out to you during the activity. Did you notice assumptions you made without realizing it? Think about how this awareness could help you as an engaged bystander. Let's summarize the learning from this activity. The goal of this activity isn't about what you notice in the images. Instead, it's to highlight how we all see the world differently based on our socialization and personal experiences. This exercise reinforces that we all have bias, and it encourages us to think about how others may interpret things differently than we do. By moving through the images quickly, we see how our unconscious bias takes over to help us make split-second decisions. Sometimes this is helpful and necessary, but other times, we need to pause and check our bias to ensure it isn't leading us astray. What we see isn't always the full story. It's important to validate our observations with additional information when possible. Staying curious and seeking to understand allows us to make better, more informed decisions. Notice actions and behaviors, but avoid profiling others. Profiling involves making generalizations about an individual based on their perceived similarity to group characteristics. Characteristics commonly used in profiling include race or ethnicity, gender expression, sexual orientation, nationality, immigration status, manner of dress, religion or religious affiliation, religious practices, or political affiliation. Profiling can overlap with similar concepts such as stereotyping, generalization, prejudice, assumption, labeling, and categorization. As engaged bystanders, it's essential to focus on actions and behaviors rather than making judgments based on characteristics that have no bearing on whether someone's behavior is concerning. Noticing and identify practice scenario. Let us consider some of the skills we have been reviewing as they relate to a scenario. A friend of yours keeps checking and responding to their phone incessantly while you and a couple of your friends are out to dinner. They seem upset and worried and has been quiet and disengaged from the conversation. They ask the waiter for a check before the meal has finished and tell the group something came up, they must go home, where they live with their partner. Take a moment to reflect on this scenario. What behaviors are you seeing? Are the behaviors concerning? Are you concerned for the safety of your friend or the safety of others? In this scenario, there are several behaviors that might raise concern. Your friend is checking and responding to their phone incessantly, which could indicate that they are feeling pressured or controlled. They seem upset and worried, as well as disengaged from the group conversation, which might suggest stress or anxiety about something happening outside the dinner. Their decision to ask for the check before the meal has finished, coupled with their explanation that something came up, may also indicate a sense of urgency or obligation to leave, and you know they live with their partner. These behaviors might point to potential concerns, such as controlling behavior from their partner or signs of intimate partner violence, IPV. However, it's important to acknowledge that these observations alone do not definitively indicate a problem. You may not have interpreted the situation in this way, and that's okay. It's a good opportunity to stay curious and ask additional questions to check in with your friend and ensure they are okay. A simple question like, "Is everything all right?" Or expressing your concern by saying, "You seemed a little upset earlier, do you want to talk about it?" can open the door for your friend to share more if they feel comfortable. There are several factors that can impact our ability to notice concerning behaviors. Distractions or not paying attention can prevent us from fully observing what's happening around us. Labeling, misjudging, or stigmatizing someone based on bias can cloud our ability to accurately assess a situation. Concerns about personal safety may cause hesitation in noticing or acting on a concern. A lack of confidence to intervene can make us second-guess ourselves. Fear of making a mistake or fear of being judged by others can also prevent action. And finally, your relationship to the person involved can influence whether or not you notice or act on a concern. To be better prepared to notice and identify concerns, it's important to recognize these barriers and factors. Understanding what might prevent us from noticing or identifying a concern can help us overcome those obstacles and be more effective in supporting others. Module 2, Summary. It is important to recognize how your bias impacts the way you notice and identify concerning behaviors. Noticing actions and behaviors is different from noticing the characteristics of a person, which can lead to profiling. There are also factors that can interfere with your ability to identify a behavior of concern. In Module 3, we will take a closer look at potential actions you can take when you notice a concern. We are now moving on to Module 3, Act. In this module, we will focus on the following objectives: identifying imminent concerns for safety, exploring options for action or inaction, recognizing when you may choose to wait and see, and describing how to make connections to resources and services. This module will help you better understand the different ways you can respond when you notice a concern. In the previous module, we explored how to notice and identify concerns. Now, as we return to the decision tree, we see that the first decision point after identifying a concern is determining whether there is an imminent danger. In some situations, calling emergency services is the safest and best option. However, there are times when it may not seem like the most appropriate course of action. First, we'll discuss what actions to take when there is an immediate threat to personal safety, the safety of the individual, or the safety of others. Then, we'll explore what options exist when there is no immediate danger and how to determine the best approach for responding to the situation. Imminent danger. Take a moment to reflect. What behaviors might indicate an imminent danger or a threat to safety, whether to yourself, the individual, or others? As you consider possible responses, think about why each behavior would be considered an immediate danger. Understanding the why behind these concerns helps reinforce the importance of identifying real threats while also ensuring we are assessing situations accurately. Now, let's explore some examples of what might, or might not, constitute imminent danger. Imminent danger examples. There are certain behaviors that may indicate an immediate threat to safety. Witnessing violence or harm to someone is a clear sign of imminent danger. Verbal or online threats, especially those that indicate intent to harm, should be taken seriously. Severe agitation, confusion, hallucinations, or delusions may suggest that an individual is in crisis and could pose a danger to themselves or others. Losing touch with reality or expressing extreme hopelessness may indicate an urgent need for intervention. Recognizing these signs can help us determine when immediate action, such as calling emergency services, is necessary to ensure safety. Additional examples of imminent danger. There are other behaviors that may indicate an immediate threat to safety. Collecting an unusual number of weapons or other dangerous materials may suggest preparation for harm. Writing or verbalizing plans to harm someone or themselves is a critical warning sign that should not be ignored. A potential drug or opioid overdose is also a medical emergency. Signs may include pale or clammy skin, being unresponsive to stimuli, choking or gurgling sounds, slow or shallow breathing, loss of consciousness, a limp body, or a bluish-purple or grayish-ashen skin tone. In these situations, administering Narcan nasal spray can quickly counteract the effects of an opioid overdose and potentially save a life. Opioid overdose awareness is included in this discussion because of the rising number of opioid-related overdoses in our communities. There is a growing emphasis on educating the public about recognizing overdose symptoms and responding effectively using over-the-counter naloxone hydrochloride nasal sprays, such as the brand name Narcan. Being able to identify these urgent situations can help ensure that the right actions are taken to protect lives. If you identify an imminent danger or safety concern, first, make sure you are safe. Next, call emergency services. For example, dial 911. Request the appropriate support based on the situation. This may include a crisis intervention team, law enforcement, or medical assistance. Be prepared to share key details, including what or who you saw, when and where you saw this, a description of the concerning behavior and why it is concerning. And remember, the detail and quality of the information you provide will impact who is dispatched to respond and how they approach the situation. Clear, accurate information helps ensure the right support arrives in the most effective way possible. iPhone Emergency SOS Overview. Many smartphones, including iPhones, have built-in emergency SOS functions that allow you to quickly contact help when needed. If you're not familiar with how this works, consider exploring the emergency SOS settings on your device. These options can typically be found in the settings menu and may offer customization based on your preferences. This slide provides screenshots of how the SOS function appears on an iOS device. However, since technology evolves quickly, use these images as a reference point and check your own device for the most up-to-date information. Understanding how to activate emergency SOS in advance can help you respond more effectively in a crisis. Android Emergency SOS Overview. This slide showcases how the emergency SOS function appears on an Android device. Since settings and capabilities can vary depending on the manufacturer and software version, consider exploring your own phone's emergency options to ensure you know how to access them when needed. Familiarizing yourself with these features in advance can make a significant difference in a crisis, helping you quickly connect with emergency services. Now, let's revisit the decision tree, this time focusing on possible concerns. After you notice and identify something as a concern, the next step is determining whether it poses an imminent danger. If there is no immediate threat to the individual or others, you may still have concerns for their well-being. At this point, there are two options. One is to engage, support, and connect the individual to resources. Over the next several slides, we will explore what it means to engage with someone in a meaningful and supportive way. Talking to someone about a concern can be sensitive for both the person expressing the concern and the individual they are worried about. Effective engagement means approaching the conversation in a non-confrontational and non-judgmental way, actively listening to their responses, and showing care and support. It can also involve connecting them to helpful resources. It's important to remember that these conversations are not meant to be investigations or attempts to diagnose or fix a problem. Instead, they are a starting point for expressing concern and offering support. Simply listening can show someone that you care. Effective engagement. Engaging with someone about a concern should be approached with care and intention. Effective engagement means being non-confrontational, approaching the conversation with a calm and open demeanor. It also means being non-judgmental, avoiding assumptions or placing blame. Actively listening is essential. This means giving the person your full attention, acknowledging what they are sharing, and responding with empathy. It's important to express care and support, letting them know they are not alone. When appropriate, connecting them to helpful resources can provide additional support and guidance. And finally, never offer something you cannot provide. You should be honest about what you can do and focus on directing them to the right resources. By engaging in these ways, you can create a supportive environment where individuals feel safe opening up and seeking help. Questions to consider. Are you ready to engage? Before engaging, ask yourself the following. How comfortable am I engaging with this person? What is my relationship to them? Would they feel comfortable talking to me about this? How can I engage without offending or making them uncomfortable? Is this the right time and place to have this conversation? Is someone else better suited to talk to them? What would I want someone to say to me if our roles were reversed? Taking a moment to reflect on these questions can help you engage in a way that is thoughtful, supportive, and effective. Getting started. How to approach someone. Gently and thoughtfully share your concerns by mentioning what you have noticed. Then, ask how they are doing. When asking questions, make sure they are open-ended, non-confrontational, non-judgmental, not aggressive. Remember, your tone and nonverbal communication play a crucial role in how your message is received. A calm and supportive approach encourages conversation and connection. Let's take a look at some sample questions you might ask. I've noticed that you haven't been around as much lately. How are you doing? You haven't been in class, at work, or out lately. How is everything? I've noticed you seem distant lately. How are you? Here are some follow-up questions you might consider. Would you like to talk to me about what's going on? I'm worried about you. How are you feeling about that? How has that been affecting you? Could you tell me a bit more? I'm here to listen. Active listening skills should be used throughout your conversation to create a supportive and meaningful interaction. Validating a person's experiences and feelings is one of the most effective ways to provide support. Let's take a closer look at 8 different active listening skills. Asking open-ended questions. Emotional labeling. Using minimal encouragers. Effective pauses or silence. Paraphrasing what you hear. Mirroring and reflecting. Using I statements. And summarizing the conversation. We will take a closer look at each of these skills in the following slides. The first skill we'll review is asking open-ended questions. These are questions that encourage detailed responses rather than a simple yes or no. Open-ended questions help the conversation flow naturally and allow the other person to share more about their experiences and feelings. Here are some examples you might use. What are your thoughts on? How do you feel about? Can you tell me more about? What do you think might be the reasons for? What does success look like for you in this situation? What are some possible solutions to? Describe your perspective on? How do you plan to approach? Using open-ended questions creates space for meaningful dialogue and helps the other person feel heard and understood. Next, let's consider emotional labeling. Emotional labeling is the practice of identifying and acknowledging someone's emotions based on what they express through their words, tone, and body language. This helps validate their feelings and shows that you are actively listening and understanding their perspective. Here are some examples of how you might use emotional labeling in a conversation. It seems like you're frustrated with the way things have been going. Can you share more about what's bothering you? I can see that this situation is making you upset. Let's talk about what's causing the anger and see if we can find a resolution. It sounds like you're feeling anxious about the uncertainty of the situation. I want to understand what's causing that anxiety for you. I sense some disappointment in your tone. Can you help me understand what you were expecting and how we can work through this together? It seems like there might be some confusion about the process. Let's take a moment to clarify any uncertainties you have. Here are some additional examples of emotional labeling in conversation. I sense that this conversation might be hurtful for you. I want to ensure that we communicate in a way that respects your feelings. I can see that this situation is overwhelming for you. Let's break it down and address one issue at a time to make it more manageable. It sounds like there's some fear about the potential outcomes. Let's discuss your concerns so we can work together to find a solution. I feel a bit of tension in the room. Can we talk about what's contributing to this tension and how we can move forward more smoothly? I sense a bit of defensiveness in your response. Help me understand what concerns you so we can work through them together. Labeling emotions in this way helps create an open and supportive dialogue, allowing the other person to feel heard and understood. Minimal encouragers are subtle and brief verbal and nonverbal cues that encourage the speaker to continue sharing their thoughts and feelings. Nodding can signal that you are engaged and listening. Smiling can help create a welcoming and supportive atmosphere. Brief verbal affirmations, such as "I see," "I understand," or "go on," let the speaker know you are following along. Brief encouraging sounds, like "uh-huh," and provide reassurance without interrupting the flow of conversation. Effective minimal encouragers are brief and unobtrusive, allowing the speaker to feel heard while maintaining the natural rhythm of the discussion. Effective pauses and moments of silence play a crucial role in active listening. They allow processing time, giving the speaker a moment to collect their thoughts. They demonstrate respect by showing that you value what the speaker is saying. They encourage reflection, helping both you and the speaker consider what has been shared. They facilitate emotional expression, giving space for feelings to surface naturally. They invite further sharing, creating an open environment for deeper conversation. They reduce misunderstandings by allowing time to absorb and clarify information. They prevent interruptions, ensuring the speaker has the time they need to fully express themselves. Using silence intentionally can make conversations more meaningful and supportive. Paraphrasing is the practice of restating or summarizing the speaker's message in your own words. It helps confirm that you understand what they are saying while also showing that you are actively engaged in the conversation. For example, you might say, "So, if I understand correctly, you're saying." In other words, what I'm hearing is, "Let me see if I got this right," you're expressing that. The key to paraphrasing is to reflect the essence of what the speaker is communicating without altering their meaning. It's not about repeating their words verbatim but rather demonstrating that you have truly listened and processed what they are sharing. Paraphrasing can also help clarify misunderstandings, as it gives the speaker an opportunity to correct or expand on what they meant. It creates a sense of connection and ensures that both people are on the same page in the conversation. Mirroring and reflecting are techniques that help build connection and demonstrate active listening by subtly aligning with the speaker's communication style. One way to do this is by repeating key words or phrases the speaker has used. This signals attentiveness and encourages them to continue sharing. Matching the speaker's tone and pace can also help establish a sense of understanding and connection. If someone is speaking softly and slowly, responding in a similar manner can create a more comfortable and open exchange. Reflecting body language is another form of mirroring. If the speaker is sitting a certain way, making eye contact, or using particular gestures, the listener might subtly adopt similar movements. This can create a sense of alignment and rapport. The key to effective mirroring is to keep it subtle and natural. It should never feel imitative or forced, as that can come across as insincere. The goal is to foster connection, so mirroring should always be used with sensitivity and in moderation. When done well, it helps the speaker feel heard, understood, and more at ease in the conversation. I statements help express feelings, thoughts, and needs in a way that takes ownership of your emotions without placing blame on the other person. By using I instead of you, the focus remains on your own experience, which promotes open communication and reduces defensiveness. For example, I feel distracted when you. I can't understand when you. I want to make sure we both stay safe. I am concerned. Using I statements allows conversations to remain constructive, making it easier to express concerns, set boundaries, and maintain positive communication. Summarizing is an important active listening skill that helps ensure clarity and reinforces understanding in a conversation. To summarize effectively, hit the key points of what the person has shared. Acknowledge their emotions to show you have been listening and understand their perspective. Validate what they are feeling or needing by recognizing their experience. Repeat any agreed upon next steps or actions to confirm understanding. Finally, seek clarification by asking, "Did I miss anything?" This gives the speaker a chance to add or correct anything before moving forward. Summarizing helps wrap up conversations in a way that makes the other person feel heard and supported. Giving feedback skills review. Providing feedback is an important part of effective communication. Let's go through the key steps to giving feedback in a way that is constructive and supportive. Step 1. Decide if you want to provide objective information. Before giving feedback, consider whether sharing your perspective will be helpful and appropriate in the situation. Step 2. Determine what kind of information you wish to provide. Are you offering support, clarification, or a different perspective? Being clear about your intent helps shape the conversation. Step 3. Think about the different ways to give feedback and pick an appropriate approach. Feedback can be direct, supportive, or exploratory, depending on the situation and the person involved. Step 4. Find the right time and place. Feedback is most effective when given in a setting where the person feels comfortable and open to the conversation. Step 5. Give the other person feedback in an objective way. Focus on observations rather than personal judgments and frame your words in a way that encourages dialogue rather than defensiveness. Expressing your support and care. When someone shares their concerns with you, offering support in a thoughtful and compassionate way can make a big difference. Here are some sample statements you can use to express your care. Thank you for trusting me with this. I'm here for you, and we can talk anytime if that helps. I want to help, but I also don't want to overstep your boundaries. What can I do to support you? It takes courage to share your feelings, and I want to commend you for that. I'm here to provide a listening ear and a caring heart. You're important to me, and I'll do whatever I can to help you feel supported and understood. Your feelings are valid, and it's okay to not be okay. Always remember to keep this information private unless the person is at risk of hurting themselves or someone else. Provide hope and reassurance that things can get better. Be patient, everyone processes things in their own time, and it is important to recognize that some issues require expert help that we are not qualified to provide, and that's okay. In these situations, guiding someone to an appropriate and safe resource can be the best way to support them. Helping someone connect to support is an important step in being an engaged bystander. If you recognize that someone may need additional help, here are some ways to guide the conversation. What avenues have you already tried? Have you considered talking to a health professional? Have you tried any services at school, university, work, or another organization? Do you have someone you trust that you can go to? There's no shame in seeking help when you're going through a tough time. Talking to a therapist or counselor might provide you with tools and strategies to better manage what you're going through. I've noticed that you've been struggling lately, and I think it might be helpful for you to talk to a professional counselor or therapist. Encouraging someone to seek help in a supportive and non-judgmental way can make it easier for them to take the next step. Getting a negative response. Not every conversation will go as planned, and sometimes, engaging with someone about a concern may result in a negative response. That's okay. Here are a few things to keep in mind if this happens. Apologize for misreading the situation. A simple acknowledgement like, "I didn't mean to overstep, I just care about you," can help ease tension. Try a different approach if appropriate. If an in-person conversation wasn't well received, consider reaching out through a text, email, or letter. Sometimes, written communication allows the person to process things at their own pace. Follow up after a few days. It may take multiple conversations before someone is ready to talk. A gentle check-in can keep the door open for future discussions. Don't push. A person may need time to acknowledge a problem and seek help on their own terms, and that's okay. Your role is to offer support, not force action. Having these conversations isn't always easy, and sometimes, fear of a negative response can be a barrier to reaching out. However, if you approach the situation with care, good intentions, and appropriate concerns, you can help minimize defensiveness. Self-care reminder. Before stepping in to support someone else, take a moment to check in with yourself. To be a grounding force for someone in need, you must first be aware of your own state. Ask yourself, what is my emotional state? Am I calm and focused, or am I upset, distracted, angry, or anxious? It's okay to have emotions, but supporting someone requires the ability to set them aside temporarily and remain present. How am I feeling physically? Am I tired, hungry, thirsty, too hot, or too cold? Physical discomfort can impact your ability to be fully engaged. If possible, take a moment to meet your own needs before helping someone else. What are my triggers, and how might I react if triggered? If this situation brings up personal emotions, consider whether you can manage your response in the moment. It's okay to take a step back if needed. Taking care of yourself first will help you be a more effective support for others. Returning to the decision tree. Now that we've explored engaging with someone directly, let's look at another option when dealing with a possible concern, referring the individual to a person or organization that can provide support. Sometimes, you may not be the best person to help, or the situation may require expertise beyond your capacity. In these cases, connecting the individual to appropriate resources can be the most effective way to support them. Sharing resources effectively. When referring someone to a resource, it's important to do so in a way that is thoughtful, respectful, and supportive. Here are some key tips to keep in mind. Ask for permission before sharing. Check if they are comfortable receiving the information. Provide context. Explain why you believe this resource might be useful for their situation. Respect privacy. Share only relevant resources and ensure confidentiality. Offer support. Let them know you're available if they want to discuss it further. Ensure accessibility. Make sure the information is available in a format they can easily use. Follow up. Check in later to see if they found the resource helpful. Empower choice. Encourage them to explore the resource but respect their decision if they choose not to. The goal is not just to provide a resource but to ensure the person feels supported and empowered in seeking help. Here is an example of a message you might use for sharing a resource. This could be an email, text message, or even a script you use in a conversation. I hope you're doing okay. I've noticed you've been distant lately. I just wanted to check in and let you know that I care about you a lot. If you're open to it, I think reaching out to resource name for support could be helpful. I understand if you're hesitant, but know that seeking help is a brave step towards feeling better. Let me know if you want to talk more about it or how I can help. This message is empathetic, non-judgmental, and supportive, giving the person space to consider the resource without pressure. If a situation doesn't present an imminent danger and you're not entirely sure whether it qualifies as a possible concern, the decision tree suggests that it may be appropriate to wait and see before taking action. This doesn't mean ignoring the situation, it means staying aware and observant while giving yourself time to gather more information. Some things to consider during this phase. Monitor the situation. Does the behavior continue or escalate over time? Gather context. Are there additional signs that confirm or dispel your concerns? Check in with others. Have others noticed the same behavior? Be ready to act if needed. If the concern grows, you may decide to engage, support, or refer the individual. This approach allows you to remain thoughtful and intentional about your response, rather than reacting prematurely or assuming the worst. There are times when taking immediate action may not be necessary or could even be premature. In these situations, it might be best to observe, gather more information, and assess whether further action is needed. Here are some examples of when you might choose to wait and see. A one-time incident? If the concerning behavior happens once and doesn't appear to be part of a larger pattern, waiting to see if it repeats might be appropriate. Ambiguous behavior? If someone's actions are unclear or don't explicitly indicate harm, it can be helpful to observe further before making assumptions. Misunderstanding? Some behaviors that seem concerning at first might be the result of a simple miscommunication. Taking time to gather more details can help avoid unnecessary intervention. Cultural differences? What appears concerning in one cultural context might be completely normal in another. Before acting, take time to understand different cultural norms. Complex situations? Some concerns involve multiple layers, requiring a careful, informed approach. Waiting gives you time to assess all factors before deciding what to do. Protecting relationships? Acting too quickly could damage trust or make someone defensive. A measured, thoughtful approach can help keep lines of communication open. Inconclusive evidence? If your concern is based on rumors or incomplete information, gathering more concrete details first may be the best course of action. In these cases, staying observant, patient, and prepared allows you to make informed decisions rather than reacting too soon. Now, let's put our knowledge into action by working through 3 practice scenarios. For each scenario, consider: what action would you take? Contact emergency services? Engage, support, and connect? Refer and/or share resources? Or wait and see? Each scenario provides limited information, so think about what initial action comes to mind and why. If you're unsure, what additional information would help you decide? There are no absolute right or wrong answers. When these scenarios have been discussed in group settings, responses often vary. That's okay. Different perspectives bring valuable insight, and what one person might overlook, another might notice. The goal of this training is to empower everyone to play a more active role in keeping our communities safe. Scenario 1. You check in with Jordan, a friend at work who has been arriving late to their shift. Jordan mentions it has been rough lately. They broke up with their partner Alex after this crazy incident with a stupid gun, and Alex has been stalking Jordan ever since. Alex calls Jordan several times a week and hangs up immediately and often shows up when Jordan is out with friends, staring from a distance. Jordan seems exhausted and says, "I just can't do this anymore. I am done. I am just done." What action would you take in scenario 1? Contact emergency services? Engage, support, and connect? Refer or share resources? Or wait and see? Scenario 2. Taylor, a neighbor, seems to be home a lot lately and you suspect they might have lost their job. The few times you chat with Taylor, they seem irritable and get upset at little things. Yesterday you passed by Taylor talking with a friend you have never seen before and overhear the friend say the problem is all these illegals taking our jobs. Someone has to do something before it is too late. Taylor is nodding their head in affirmation but has a pained look on their face. What action would you take in scenario 2? Contact emergency services? Engage, support, and connect? Refer or share resources? Or wait and see? Scenario 3. At a community meeting discussing local housing development plans, tensions run high as residents voice their concerns about potential policy changes. One individual, Casey, becomes increasingly agitated during the discussion. As others share their perspectives, Casey interrupts with anger in their voice, "You are all crazy. If you accept these changes, there will be consequences." The atmosphere in the room grows tense. What action would you take in scenario 3? Contact emergency services? Engage, support, and connect? Refer or share resources? Or wait and see? Module 3 Summary. Call emergency services when there is an imminent threat to safety. When addressing a possible concern, your options include: engage, support, connect. Refer and share resources. Wait and see. Additionally, effective engagement requires empathy and active listening skills to foster trust and open communication. Making a meaningful connection increases the likelihood that support and resources will be accepted. This concludes Module 3, where we explored the decision-making process when acting on a concern. Now that we've discussed when and how to take action, the next step is understanding where to turn for help. In Module 4, we will review national, regional, and local resources that provide support for individuals in need. These organizations offer a range of services, from mental health support and crisis intervention to community-based assistance and emergency aid. Having knowledge of available resources empowers you to confidently connect someone with the right support when they need it most. Module 4, Resources. The objective of this module is to acquaint yourself with national and local resources, beneficial for both sharing with others and seeking support when acting as an engaged bystander. In this module, we will review national resources, Vermont state-level supports, and services available at the University of Vermont. If you are completing this training and are not located in Vermont or at UVM, we encourage you to take some time to research and explore state and community-level resources in your own region. Having a clear understanding of local support systems can help you act confidently when connecting someone to the help they need. These national resources are available for individuals in need of support. If you or someone you know is struggling, these hotlines and text services can connect you to trained professionals who can help. It's important to be familiar with these numbers so you can quickly provide support when needed. If you are unsure which resource to use, the crisis text line is a great place to start, as trained crisis counselors can guide individuals to appropriate help. For the crisis text line, you can text HOME to 741741. Vermont Resources. If you or someone you know is in crisis, support is available through these Vermont-based resources. To access the crisis text line, text VT to 741741 to reach a trained crisis counselor within minutes. The suicide hotline is accessible at 988 to connect with the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Facing Suicide VT is a website at facingsuicidevt.com, offering resources and guidance for those experiencing suicidal thoughts or supporting someone in crisis. For physical abuse or violence, immediate assistance is available. If you are in immediate danger, call or text 911. The domestic violence hotline number is 1-800-228-7395. The sexual violence hotline number is 1-800-489-7273. Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence is a statewide organization connecting survivors to local support services. You can access the network at www.vtnetwork.org. If you are reviewing this training and not located in Vermont, take time to research and explore similar resources in your state or local area. Additional Vermont resources: alcohol or drug use. VT HelpLink, call 802-565-5465 or visit vthelplink.org for free and confidential alcohol and drug support and referral services if you or someone you know needs help. Opioid overdose prevention and naloxone rescue program resources are available at www.healthvermont.gov/emergency/injury/opioid-overdose-prevention. Quit smoking. Visit 802quits.org for free tips, tools, and support for Vermonters ages 18 and older who are ready to quit all forms of tobacco use. Teens who need help quitting smoking or vaping can text "Start My Quit" to 36072 to access free, confidential My Life, My Quit services. Vermont 211. Dial 211 anywhere in Vermont or visit vermont211.org to get referral help to public and private state and community services. Additional resources. Get help now. Vermont Department of Health. Visit www.healthvermont.gov/about/contact-us/get-help-now for additional support services. Local community or organization resources. These slides are designed to highlight organization-specific or community-based resources that can support individuals in need. UVM Emergency and Reporting a Concern. For emergencies, call 911 or UVM Police Services at 802-656-3473. You can submit an anonymous report through the CatSafe app, or submit a report online at uvm.edu/report. If you are reviewing this training and not affiliated with UVM, consider researching similar emergency and reporting resources available within your own institution or community. Additional University of Vermont Support Services. Additional University of Vermont Support Services. Remember the Circles of Influence activity from Module 1? The Circles of Influence activity provides a visual way to understand how each of us interacts within multiple contexts in our lives. We often belong to many different organizations or groups at the same time. This activity helps us recognize that our roles within each group may vary, but regardless of our role, every one of these circles represents a place where we can notice concerns and make a difference. Additionally, each circle also represents a group or organization we are a part of, and many of these organizations may have support services that can help someone in need. As an engaged bystander, being aware of these resources within our own circles can be a powerful way to connect someone to support. Before we conclude, please take a moment to complete the post-training survey. You can find it at go.uvm.edu/4post. Thank you for your time. We appreciate your engagement in this training on communities acting to refer and engage. Our hope is that the information and skills shared throughout this training will empower you to recognize concerns, engage effectively, and connect individuals to support when needed. Every person has a role in creating safer, more supportive communities, and small actions can make a big difference. By applying what you've learned, you can help foster a culture of care and awareness in your circles of influence. Thank you for your commitment to making our communities safer and stronger.